Good evening. We are the Finance Commission. We are meeting this evening in the Robert Thornton Room of Town Hall. I believe we're live tonight, and we will start our meeting now. First thing on the agenda is the acceptance of the minutes from November 14th. I'll take a motion to accept or change.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
To accept? Okay, all in.
Just a couple of points,
Yep.
just to refresh my memory. On financial factors on page 2, we talked
Yep.
about them. I guess I'm okay. They're potential indicators, because there are a couple there that I believe, after discussion, we decided that they were not feasible to track. I think item 26, expenditures for repair and maintenance of general fixed assets. It's the metric we don't have.
Okay.
So I guess my question is, I'm reading it now, is it's an amended
The
list.
list.
It's we voted on these, but I think there's just a recognition that there are a couple that we're not going to be able to
Okay,
employ.
could we identify those on here and say, Molly, could we put something beside that saying, not accepted as
I think it was just 26. I think that was the
the only
only
one? Okay. Thank you. Anything
Just reading the
else?
formula.
The only other thing is a point of discussion for us at a later point, I think, on items 20 and 21, percent of debt service to operating budget. That is the metric that we were presented with, and my only note here was, and you're familiar with it, Ann, from some work you've done recently on the policy debt service for a change or a statement in our policy that should be reading debt service as a percent of non-utility revenue.
Yeah,
And when we get to that policy discussion, maybe we should revisit whether or not item 20 and 21 should reflect operating budget versus revenue.
right.
Just-
Well, for the sake of the minutes, this
It's
is what
fine.
we discussed.
Yeah.
But we should bring it up, and actually it's on my, under other this evening, so we can take care of that then, okay? All right. Okay, we'll take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous? Okay, okay, Travis, you're up, please,
All right.
to introduce yourself. Do you know everybody here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for your time. For those of you watching, I'm Travis with the Norwood Recreation Department. We're here today because we would love a representative from the FinCom to be a part of a pool feasibility study we're hoping to do over the course of the year to take a look at the 2 seasonal pools that we have in town and the future of what we're going to be doing with them. Obviously, this is a very big decision, both financially, recreationally, everything really. They both kind of tie into each other, so we're just trying to get a member from a few committees in town and trying to come up with a plan of attack, recommendation for the selectmen to pursue or move forward with.
How large do you see the committee being?
I think we have the FinCom, Capital LA, Board of Selectmen. We have Mark Ryan, Bernie Cooper, so myself and Howie Weinstein, and then I'm hoping that our Catherine Lee, our aquatics director over the last few years, will be part of the committee as well.
That would be
So
good.
So that's 8,
people.
not
Yep.
an odd number, right?
Yeah,
Just an even number.
yeah. Good point.
You know where I'm coming from, if you have a vote next time.
I understand. Makes sense. I don't know.
The school committee.
Well,
Good point. There you go.
Actually, their students sometimes use the
Yeah.
facilities in the summer, so it might be.
I was thinking maybe.
Huh?
Yeah. Not
The
saying me
after-school-
personally, but one of us.
The after-school programs use it, and that falls under the purview of the school department, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. The school committee, if they're willing, I would love to get a member of their committee as well. And I'll,
Hey,
that would make
another night out.
another night out. No, it'll be, yeah. We're very much in the early stages of it right now, so I'm just kind of approaching every board right now and getting committee members.
Do you have a timeline when you want it done?
Not right now. No, I'm literally gathering the committee right now, getting everybody together, and then kind of working on a timeline from there. I mean, ideally, maybe by the end of next fiscal year, but it's going to take a while to gather facts.
You have your first meeting, do you know?
Probably the end of January or beginning of February.
Okay.
Okay, and then how often are you gonna meet?
Once a month.
You don't know? Or
Once a month. Once a
Okay.
month.
I
Yes,
think one of the reasons for the timeline is the fact that we will certainly need some engineering money to take a
Yes.
look at the integrity of the two pools and look at the physical conditions. And right now, the committee has no funding, so this is something that Travis is planning going forward because there eventually will be some major capital outlays associated with the pools.
okay.
Yep, Bernie's correct.
Good, you have good vision. I've
Thank
seen
you.
it, and in the future, thank you for bringing that
I appreciate it.
attention.
Okay.
Chair, so, I'm on the designated representative for the FinCom on the outlay committee, and I
That's right.
don't have any issues with being on both
Thank you.
committees if
Okay, that would
the
work.
commission so wishes.
Thank you very much.
That would
Sure.
work? Great.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Donnelly will represent us.
Thank you, Mr. Donnelly. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Travis.
Okay, anything else, Travis?
Yes, appreciate the time.
Okay. All right, is everybody here from the school department?
Well, not everybody, but 3 quality representatives.
All right.
Good evening.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. I brought presents.
Oh,
Your own personalized copy. I'll autograph it later if you'd like.
okay.
Is that an update?
Valuable. Is
There you
this
go.
updated
Is that
one?
enough?
This is
You better not
updated.
know where now to sell it.
It's in other words, different than what I have here now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, it is, okay.
Yeah.
What date was this
Better
created?
quality paper.
Yesterday. Well, it wasn't created. It was
Okay,
updated.
go ahead,
1/14.
guess.
All right, you got a date on here, thank you.
I do.
1/14 down the
114.
bottom.
Yesterday. There you go.
Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna actually skip down. Tom from the override staff is old news.
Karen, 1 second. Karen, have you been here before? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew who you were.
There you go. Oop, too far.
I introduced
you
myself
go.
to Kelly.
One more, right there, beautiful. All right, so to kind of make it easier, the new things are in the aqua, on yours, it's blue, but in the conversion, it's aquamarine maybe?
Nice color.
Yeah. So, so we'll start at the top. We're still in the process of looking at and deciding on our English language arts curriculum at the elementary level. So that is sitting there waiting for that purchase. You can see under English language learning curriculum materials, we've added a subscription to Dreambox, which is a online tool, and then bought some more English language learning materials for our high school. No changes in the career pathways, although we do have good news with our partnerships there and our students going off to Harvard last week to study there. So we can scroll down a little bit further, Mr. McQuaid. Excuse me.
I actually was at a PT office the other day, and not here, but they had students who were interested in health sciences in the office, and that was nice to see.
right place, Dave?
Too far, a little bit. Oop. Yep, just a touch. Well, you can see it. At the bottom is where it says intervention materials. The Renaissance Flow 360 software, they come up with a really cool, catchy name. But that is our one part of our intervention and assessment tool. That's the intervention piece. You can see the price there. Lexia is an online language-based software. We use that a lot with those having difficulty with language, especially with our EL population.
Now, by intervention, you mean a student, identifying a student who is struggling.
Right, so a student is struggling, and
Academic
these are materials that we use to help them get up to speed.
Okay.
What type
Okay.
of struggle? Academic, social?
Academic, these are academics.
Okay, so do we have any interventions for social concerns?
We have a social emotional program, and the adjustment counselors are a major piece of that, bringing them up to speed. Okay, so then personalized learning tools, this is where we take children's interests, their abilities. Newsella is a software program that takes current events and other text, a lot in social studies, and will adjust it, same content at different reading levels, so all kids can access the same materials. English language art curriculum offset, we expect that about 25,000 will be, that is not actually spent yet, but we have it encumbered, if you will, or set aside, because a lot of the ELA program materials have that personalization piece to it. So some of the money will come from that for that curriculum material. Project Lead the Way is the project-based science and technology pathways and studying that we've implemented at the middle school. So you can see we already started with the computer innovations and makers. That was one program. The training for that and the curriculum development PD. So those were two new additions in there. There's another 71,000, and we want to add 2 more programs and have the materials in place this spring and training over the summer so that each grade has an opportunity to do one of these courses. So that's what that other 70,000 will be for. The next one is PBL. Question?
How long does it take you to implement these? I know that you said that before at town meeting, and I just want to make sure that everybody understands. It's not like you get it and it's done.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to, well, there's 2 pieces of it. There's buying the equipment to do the program. So it's computer software, it's building a maker space for the one we have now, but it's also the training of the staff and the staff developing the curriculum and the knowledge to run it. So usually it's a year-long gear up. We had hoped to, and we got a grant to do training for this first piece, so we're able to kind of jump into that straight away. But 2 and 3, which will happen both next year, there's a little bit more to it. So the plan is.
Ongoing costs with the software for maintenance?
Once you buy it, there are materials you have to, like with the maker stuff, the stuff to put in the machines to make the things, you have to buy that every year. But your major expense is that first startup, and then there's an ongoing, supply expense.
They have to buy the pieces of the robot if they're putting a robot together.
Right. I don't know if anyone is following my Twitter feed, but they were using microbots in the computer class and doing programming with microbots in the middle school, and that was part of this program.
Dr. Thompson, could I add one thing to what Anna
Sure.
was asking? So some of this moves quicker than some of the other pieces. So if you go back to the page before, where you see like the curriculum refresh and establish the cycle, we haven't spent any money on that yet because we're still piloting. So that's the piece that I think is really important for people to understand when we're refreshing the entire curriculum, which right now is our ELA, English Language Arts, for all K through 5. That's where you have to pilot. That's where it takes a while to roll out. And we do have, Dr. Wyeth is putting together a plan for after ELA, social studies, then science, and that'll continue to roll over every year. But that takes longer to fully implement, than something like the career pathways or the Project Lead the Way.
Okay, thank you.
All right, sorry to make you jump around there, Mr. McQuaid. So if you look, we're down at PBL training. PBL stands for Project-Based Learning, and this is an approach where students are engaged in projects and working on projects that connect to the curriculum and extend the curriculum. So the first piece of that for us is we have a trainer coming in to get the administrative team up to speed on that, on what is project-based learning, why is it valuable, how do you create a place where this happens. And this is something you build over time. Maybe there's one project a term, and then you get into 2 projects a term and build from there. But it is more authentic learning and really creates thinkers and problem solvers. So we will still have some money back from that, and we're hoping to set up some training maybe in the spring on that, or at least get materials in people's hands. Intervention, training, coaching, major piece of that, again, the assessment intervention tool being Renaissance. So that piece is there for the training of that. So we just had the third training with our Renaissance champions today. There were 30 people in the room learning how to coach the other people in the buildings on how to read the reports and set up the program to intervene with kids who are not on track.
Can I ask a question about that? How do the federally funded programs like Title I play into our intervention strategy with these softwares?
They do not, because we're doing it with everybody. The key thing with Title I is it cannot supplant a regular program. So currently, we have Title I tutoring, so kids will get services, individual services, small group services to bring them up to speed as well.
So this is an addition.
This is an addition. This is for everybody. So if you're on track, we're going to keep you on track. We're going to move you forward, hopefully higher and keep you up to speed. Those that are exceeding will continue to exceed, have activities around that to keep those skills up. And those that need targeted assistance will get that.
So every student is basically in this software
Every student,
program, is that-
every student
That's
3
super cool.
through 8. And we are targeting students who have historically struggled or not performed well in the MCAS in 9 and 10.
Okay, awesome, no,
Okay.
that's great, that's
Yeah.
awesome.
The other piece is co-teaching. Co-teaching is where you have a special educator and a regular educator teaming together in classrooms. So we have we're doing that mostly at our middle schools, and then we're going to spread it from there. But that is an effective way to get our special ed students up to speed. The goal is to have all of our students in regular classrooms before they get to high school, or at least when they get to high school, so that they are on track to pass the MCAS and get a regular diploma. And then we've already covered the restored cuts as well, so that is the update. So there will be more on this, probably late winter, early spring, when some more of these pieces come in. And we're not, and I want to stress, we're not just spending money to spend money. We're being thoughtful about this. We're planning so that it's going to be buildable and scalable, and that we're making good decisions as we move forward. So, you're welcome.
And with the support of the chairman and the school committee, correct?
Oh, absolutely.
What?
Thank you for the information. I think that what I really see here in the summary is that when we were going through the budget review last year in the materials and programs and restored cuts and so forth that you were planning to do with the override, it's good to see that we were talking about this back in September when we first met. And even at that point in time, the school department was well on its way to ensuring that that money was going to the needs that were addressed by the override. And,
Right.
The curriculum materials, just to emphasize once again, these are things that without that additional funding, you wouldn't be able to do.
Right.
And, so my compliments, good work.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
just to take that one step farther, we had a lot of questions back in the spring around accountability and transparency and how do we know you're going to do what you say you're going to do. And all of this also ties into our 5-year strategic plan, which Dr. Thompson every other month gives an update report to the school committee. So not our next meeting, but February 5th. He'll be giving the bi-monthly report, and all of that then gets tied to the strategic objectives
Right.
in that 5-year plan.
Right. However, if you don't want to wait for that report, you can actually go to the website, and there is a dashboard on the website that shows our progress there in real time, which is a neat way to go. And if you have questions about the strategic plan, it is on NCM. I'm a star.
I think all these avenues of communication to the residents of Norwood
Yeah.
who paid extra to do all this
Yeah.
is important.
Well, I think it's important that, we've got incredible kids. We need to make sure we're setting them up to be successful. And it's really kind of a privilege to be able to give the teachers the tools to do this work, and them diving in and really rolling up their sleeves and getting into it is a compliment to them and their work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Karen had a couple of other things. The the calendar?
Yeah, so we just wanted to update you on some things that we already discussed at the school committee, but again, just to keep the communication open between us. Our budget subcommittee, which is the three of us, and then also Maya, worked on developing a budget timeline that we're gonna share with you. And then there were two issues at our last meeting that Karen brought to our attention that we voted on that I see is actually reported in the paper right in front of me. I'm like, oh, how timely that we're gonna tell you about it in person.
I haven't read it yet.
I haven't either. I just sat down. I was like, oh. But Ms. Sheridan, do you want to go through it for us?
Sure. I guess I'll start with that. The raises for the transportation drivers and monitors. So we put a proposal for a raise for the drivers and monitors. The last time they received a pay increase was September 1st of 2018, so we felt like it was something that should be reviewed. We requested a 2.5% increase to be retroactive back to September 1st, 2019, and it was approved by the school committee. The estimated cost for this raise was $16,416, which will be covered by the school bus fees revolving account. We're also going to be reviewing other districts' pay, their benefits, and any other
So I was
agreement.
just going to ask you,
Right.
how does it compare
Right.
into private?
Right. So we are doing, we're visiting that. I'm going to be calling different districts. I did send out a listserv on the MASBO website, but I didn't get a lot of responses, so I'm going to make some calls. We also have a copy of Franklin's agreement with their drivers and monitors. That is not a union, but they do have an agreement. I do have that.
We're not either, are we?
No,
No.
we're not agreement. I will tell you that as soon as Al left the school committee meeting, his cell phone was on fire with the van drivers and monitors who were watching and extremely excited. I had people come in my office. There was people talking all day long about it. And they were very excited and feel very much appreciated after that meeting. So it was really nice to see. And Al said he felt like a superstar that day, so it was really nice. We also put in a proposal for a raise for the substitutes, the teachers, and the secretaries.
Do you mind just on the drivers, if we
Okay.
could? Just want to make sure that someone follows up with HR director here for information regarding, Al brought up the information regarding the sick time
Yes.
benefit, which.
We are going to the person the
yeah,
benefits and the
didn't
sick
sound
time
like
as
it was
well.
consistent with what
Right.
the law mandates, so
Right.
Molly Keene should be, the person I think Al, and you probably would benefit from that conversation, is to make sure your policy's lined up with the state law.
Yes, we will. We're reaching out to her, and like I said, we're going to be revisiting this in February at, I think it's the second school committee and meeting in
Yeah,
February.
The last Wednesday, I think it's the 26th.
Right.
The 26th.
Because the budget is on the first one, so we need a
And
little
Molly
bit of
may even
time.
have some resources that
Right.
can, go along with this too.
Right.
So the other question I had just is, as you go out and you're looking at communities in terms of the transportation, how do you determine which communities you're going to identify? Is it anybody who can respond to it, or?
No, we'll probably do the surrounding towns and maybe look at, go on the DESI website and see what towns would be similar to us.
Is it length of routes, time in the bus, that kind of thing?
They get a per hour.
They get a per hour.
Per hour.
Right.
Yeah, it's an
I
hourly.
think
Yeah.
maybe you want to make sure you just cover the same towns that you are designating as your comparators for your teachers' contracts, for example. I
Right.
think those-
We did get a couple of them, not many, but I know Walpole recently increased their rates. They have a very large transportation department. They similar to NOAA, they do most of their special education transportation in-house. So they're very comparable in my eyes. Dedham, a couple others, but we're going to reach out to several of them to get an idea of what the average is.
And I attended the meeting last week, and I heard the interactions and the conversations, and I think a point was well made that this is a good proposal, because from what the information you did have and from the communities you had contacted, the rates were sorely under
Yes.
the market you identified. So
Yeah, a couple
I
were-
did
yeah.
give you the rates if you
Yeah.
want me to read them.
Oh, you have them? Okay. I just took a couple notes when you, these are the notes from Karen at the last meeting. So Walpole, $17 an hour for their van drivers. Millicent, Medway are between 17 and 19. Woburn was $17.50 for their driver. And then there's another district, and I missed who you said, but another district out there ranged between $17.88 and $19.05. So you can see, you know, our drivers, we went from 16 to $16.40. So even with the increase that we just voted on, we're still under, which is why we're doing further analysis. And, you know, a number of the school committee members asked for like a comprehensive benefit package, which is what we're looking into.
And these are not full-time drivers, these are.
Some are.
Some are?
Some are, depending on how far they have to go and how many, yeah.
Okay.
And it's increasing all the time
Right.
because of
So
the
they
needs.
benefited, they've got the benefit package.
Right.
And the proposal is for 2.5%, which is in the ballpark for the annual increases we're seeing.
Well, we wanted to at least get this rolling and get them a raise
Yep.
retroactive to September and then revisit it once we get some more information. And, I mean, like I said, the drivers were ecstatic.
Can I ask a question? So something I'm hearing, there's no regular schedule where we do raises for our transportation department?
Not historically.
Historically, they
We're
were.
working on that.
That's why we're
Would we
revisiting
put them on
it.
the same schedule as the town?
I don't have an answer yet. I mean,
Okay.
we're looking into all of that.
Are they
but
members of a union?
There.
No.
So they would
they're
not be, so they'd be separate from any other wage schedule
But
that.
that doesn't necessarily seem fair to me.
Yeah.
Oh,
Right,
Like,
well,
because they're
that's
not
why
part
we're
of a union,
revisiting
just
it.
because they're not
Right.
unionized, they don't get raises, that doesn't seem
Right.
fair to me.
Right,
Yeah. I think the school committee agrees and.
Right.
and have
It seems like you
confidence
guys
shared
do.
it. Yeah.
yeah, we,
Honestly, I don't think anybody disagreed. I don't know, for some reason, I think once we brought it to the table, it was like, oh yeah, this should be revisited every year.
Because they're not a contract and they're not represented, you can lose sight of some things,
Right.
and
Sure.
unfortunately.
yeah, and,
But I am sure you guys will identify it and.
right. And they do a fantastic job, and actually, since Al Bishop has taken over, we've brought more runs in-house, which is considerably less expensive than contracting out with the private. But everybody's having trouble finding drivers right now. We don't need to have our high-quality drivers going someplace else, so it is a competitive.
It's very competitive, and not only that, it's hard to even get the contracted service people
Right.
out there because they're looking for drivers.
Right.
So it is very important to, keep on top of it every year.
Okay.
The other proposal that we did put through and was approved was a proposal to raise the substitutes, both the teachers and the secretaries. The minimum wage raised to $12.75 per hour in January. So we wanted to, although municipalities are not subject to that minimum wage, we still felt like that to be competitive, we should increase those. So that was voted on to increase their rates, and the estimate of the cost for that was $22,158.
Can I
So-
ask a question about the substitute? Two questions. One, a procedural question. We allowed non-degreed people. How do we vet a substitute teacher is qualified to be in a classroom with kids?
We interview them, they apply, we interview them, we do a query on them.
And they do not have to have any sort of teaching experience or degree?
Short term, a day or two, no. If they're going to be a long-term sub for extended leave, like a maternity leave, then we hire a certified teacher because they're doing more than just executing a plan.
So, and do we have comparisons for area, so this rate seems really low to me, because if I just do the math out in my head, this comes out to about $20,000 a year for a teacher who works 9 months, which is well below what the minimum wage is. So that's why I'm wondering how this competes with other towns. And
There
the
is a
quality of the
chart.
teachers that we're getting to offer to substitute in Norwood, is it lower than other towns because our rates are so low? Because even if we have someone in there for a day, I would like someone who's qualified if they're gonna be sitting with my kids. I know you query them,
Right.
so they're not going
Right.
to be, have any criminal background, but
Right.
I would prefer to have someone qualified. So I'm wondering how this seems very low to me, so I'm just wondering how it relates to area towns.
There is a page there that gives you some rates for the towns that did respond. Again, we can reach out and get some more, but we did get Dedham, and their daily is 80 and 90 was what they responded with. You can see the different ones. Reading is 75 and 95.
They're all low.
Randolph,
Yeah.
80.
They're all, yeah.
They're all low.
That
Okay,
one I
was just
did
wondering-
get much,
yeah.
many more responses from. The drivers I didn't get as many responses from. And they also do a lot of different things, which I put in the notes, like it's, if you have this degree, you get more, if you have this degree. So it's not as easy as just saying $80, because it depends on your qualifications.
Right.
So,
Right, and each of our building has a building sub, and they are essentially currently retired teachers
Okay.
who fill in, but sometimes we need more than one in the building.
Sure.
You know, so that might be a college kid home on break, it might be someone who else is retired, or someone between jobs, or someone who wants to figure out if they want to teach or not.
Right.
So,
so that was the substitutes. The other two that are on the agenda, I'm not sure if you want to go over them now. The budget timeline we did get approved at the school committee. There's a copy of that there for you all.
Is that in this packet?
Yeah, that
I
one
did
I
give you
emailed
a
you
copy.
early.
Yeah.
so-
Yeah,
I
everything's
know
in
we
there.
got it in
Yeah.
our packet, but I
Yeah.
didn't know whether it was also in here.
I did put it in there just because I wasn't sure, but it is there. If anybody has any questions on the budget timeline, we're in the process right now of all the staff have sent in their requests, and I'm in the process right now of gathering all their requests and put it into the budget and see where that ends up with the amount of money that we get. Going through all the contracts, moving all the employees up to their new steps and lanes, looking at the different contracted services and, for example, the bus contract and different things like that. So that's a process I'm in right now, is kind of building the budget. We're going to be giving budget version A to the school committee on, the school committee meeting on, I think it's February 5th. I think this is,
It's a Wednesday, yeah.
I have it as 2/6, but I think it might be the 5th. But we've already done most of this. I've been reviewing the contracted obligations. We did have meetings with the principals and the administration on enrollment and staffing. They gave us some of their wish list, which they're still giving me. And
they got a lot of wishes.
they do.
Don't we all?
Right. Should tell them the holidays are over, but that's okay. We'll work on that.
And
Trying to
we're
get your
also-
work
Next
done.
Christmas, right?
And we are also constrained by our 3.5%
Right.
pledge, so.
But everybody
It's on the
wants to tell
timeline.
you.
It says there no more than, it's on there.
I see that.
Okay.
Thank you.
I've had some
Well,
come in
I
that
did see that, and it's in big.
Just to reassure you, we do remember.
You know, given our 5-year projection, and as you see here, and you put it in here, 3.5, we are able to go a little later than normal. And hopefully we'll have a more fine-tuned budget by the time we meet. And
Okay.
we'll be all just, up, bing.
Yeah,
we're
we won't
done.
know what to do with ourselves.
Oh, I think
Sure, you gotta fill in the time.
Well, if you see our long-term agenda, there's plenty
Well,
on
yeah, I
there.
was gonna say, when we have a 30-minute meeting, then we'll talk about, we don't know what to do.
When does that happen?
I'm telling you though, everybody thinks that what they need is the greatest. They come into my office and say, but you don't know. I'm like, no, I don't know. Everybody has their
It
needs.
definitely will be a change to past business.
Yes.
The other thing was not on the agenda, but I did bring a copy of the cost allocation agreement, which the school committee did sign, which was sent
Do you
over
want
to
to
the
explain what
town.
the cost allocation agreement is, because for our
I don't think we've
audience?
seen this.
No, we have not.
I wasn't sure if you needed a copy of it for this meeting, so I did tell Ann that I brought it just in case you
And
did.
it's between
The
the
town,
selectmen.
it has to be voted upon by the selectmen. But I worked with Tom on this, and it is the expenditures from the local revenues that the town spends for the school department that has to be kind of divvied up to the percentage that is the school's portion. So at the end of the year, Tom will send over a report on the different expenditures that the town paid for the school. Example would be part of the treasurer department's expenditures would be attached to the school expenditures, despite the fact that they're paid over at the town side. Same with like insurances, different insurances, There's a whole list of them.
Blue Hills Regional School.
The accounting and finance department, the clerks department, the IT department. So this is an agreement that needs to be signed by both the school and the town. We did put it that this one is going through June 30th of this year to be reviewed. One of the reasons for that was when you're going to your new town-wide facility, this will have to be changed. So we decided that we would put it through June 30th and revisit it for next year. But at least you have this agreement in place, which is required by law. So the end of year report, it's one of the audit. When they do the audit, this thing needs to be signed in
Well,
order.
this is standard operating practice in business and.
Yep.
But it's
Right.
something that we haven't had or
Right.
we've missed for a few years. I don't know what had happened
Well, I
in
think,
the
well,
process.
we've
but-
had it, it hasn't necessarily been in writing
Ah.
and voted on, which has been
Right.
a finding for us in our audit, so.
You've had your agreement, it just has never been a document signed. So without being the document
We've been
signed,
codified.
it's, right.
Right.
So now you have your document, and so I've suggested maybe the spring, kind of revisit it to decide if you want to change it that time. You can always, keep this in place for another year, it depends, but we did specifically put it that we were going to review it at the end of this year. Because you will see that the operation of maintenance right now says none, as all are directly paid by the school, which that's the one thing that most likely will change next year.
Yep.
But I believe in fiscal 21
21.
budget, it's gonna stay the same.
Right, so then maybe we might, but at least we revisit it, that's why we thought. So, thank you to Tom for working with me.
Yes. We're very excited to have that.
Madam Chair, I just want to compliment Karen. She's been terrific to work with. She's very knowledgeable about school finance. She's learning munis with the rest of us. And she's putting in the hours, and she has a great disposition to work with, so very helpful.
Great.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, you also,
Right.
I'm going to compliment you too. I find you to be very factual and transparent, and I do appreciate your reports and your input.
Thank you very much.
Same here. Keep telling it, everybody.
Can I
good
ask
you-
an unrelated question unrelated to this? Do
Is
you
it
know-
easy? Because we're only answering easy questions.
Well, since you have a pink tie on, I'll make it
There
easy,
you go.
okay?
Yeah.
Can you give an update on the middle school, where we are with the feasibility stuff, and would that be something that you could provide?
No, I get, yes.
Is
So
that
we
easy?
have.
Is that considered easy?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, well, it's easy except for all the paperwork.
No, I knew somebody was going to ask this question. Do you
oh,
know
look at
that by any chance?
Look at this, yes. All right, so
We're a
we
team
we
here.
have,
I grabbed it on my way out the door. I'm like,
good job.
somebody is
So
gonna
we have finished we have finished as of the 24th, we will have finished the eligibility stage, which is where we had to do our first bit of fact-finding, form a building committee, things along that line, and we passed in everything early. It didn't help us. I was hoping to get on the board meeting for December, but the MSBA has had some enrollment turmoil over the possibility of this project possibly being a 5 through 8, because we would move the 5th grade and size, and they are fiscally responsible and don't want to overbuild, and if they give more money to a town that doesn't need it, they don't have it for another town who does need it. So I get all that, but that has been a back and forth since the beginning of November. We are finally seeing the end of that. We are tentatively scheduled for the 13th to enter the feasibility stage, go to the board meeting in Boston, get blessed, and go into stage 2, which is where you actually hire someone to start organizing the project. One thing we are going to have to be very careful about in that is really making the case for, should we choose to go through a 5 through 8 middle school, is really making the case for the space. And the MSBA is only looking at numbers and numbers of rooms. They don't know how the rooms are being used. Our challenge is that we have rooms, but we also have worked very hard to keep students in the district, in programs in the district with their neighbors and peers. So that programming piece does not the ELL population increasing and have to having instructional space for that? So these sorts of things. So I've said to them over and over again, I could use this middle school today because I could use the space that we would vacate in the elementary schools today. And I've invited them down to come and see the computer lab and the library and the hallway. But that,
Cleveland, yes.
and right, so these are the things that we need to codify in our feasibility study. But basically, you do a draft plan, site research, and basically come up with a plan that you're going to sell to the MSBA as being feasible. And then, should we do a good job on that, which I am planning on, then we'll get into the design phase, and then once the design is approved, then there's the building phase, and so we're looking at probably 5 or 6 more years before we
Before you
sit
open it.
in a chair. So
Okay.
the building committee visited Natick, one of Natick high schools, Wilson Middle School, 5 through 8 middle school last week. I am currently working to have a trip to Rainham early in February. There's another 5 to 8 middle school. That building committee is there's another piece we have to do between now and the end of the month so we can get on the February board meeting. We're already starting on that, so hopefully the 13th, we'll be on to the second phase of the journey.
At
I'm
what
working towards.
point do you have to make the decision relative to the grades, the fifth going into?
We would really need to do that in the next year, in that feasibility, because we're going to have to come up with.
Sure that's gonna be.
Yeah, because we're going to have to come up with a plan that's feasible and the MSBA accepts. So that's got to be determined.
And MSBA would be expecting some kind of an approval from the town before they would even consider building a school.
I'm not sure. I haven't
You
looked
don't
that.
know
I
how
haven't
that
looked that
works?
far ahead.
Yeah.
I mean the town has already approved us to go through the feasibility study. That was at fall town meeting. So after that, I'm not quite. I haven't gotten that.
Well, no,
far
I
yet.
guess I expect it will be very controversial
Yeah.
whether the fifth goes
I
into
think we have to
middle.
finish this phase 2, determine with the MSBA, is it a 5 through 8, 6 through 8, make sure they're on board, and then
Right.
after that, we would go back to the town.
We're gonna need money at some
Right,
point.
Yeah.
but I think it's
Yeah.
after
Is that
this
the
next
next-
design.
After the-
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't
Right.
think it's
We don't
this year.
need money for entering into the design?
Well, in the
You already
November
approved it.
town meeting, was it November, October? I
Well,
forget now.
this is. I mean,
Oh,
right.
October,
Okay.
we asked for the
October.
1.5 for the feasibility study,
Okay.
that was approved, and
Right.
we could not have moved forward
But-
without
okay.
that. Yeah.
Right.
So the feasibility is part of the design?
Yeah, but not
Design is part of the
not the
feasibility.
details design.
Okay.
It's more of a site study.
Okay.
Options, does it face this way, does it face that way?
Okay.
General, scaled outside view of things, but you're not gonna get into where the electrical box and the plumbing
Okay.
is gonna go, that sort of thing, so.
That-
That's the next piece after that, that's the design phase, and then after the design phase is the building phase,
Can
which
I
is
ask
2
one more
years.
question?
Yeah,
So if we decide for our town that a 5 through 8 school makes sense because of the potential overcrowding in the middle schools, like the computer lab and the hallway, like you mentioned, the Cleveland, and the board says no, we're only going to approve a 6 to 8. Can we supplement so we could
Yeah,
make a
yeah,
decision as a
right.
town if the community supported it. We
Right.
could make a decision that says we will invest the additional money if they will not.
Right, and then the
Right.
part that
Okay.
would be 6 through 8, they would reimburse that up to 50%. But if they say, no, we don't think you need the 5th grade, and we decide to put the 5th grade in, that 5th grade portion of the building would be the town's responsibility.
But most of the cost is in putting the
Right.
foundation in the
Right.
ground. Once you start adding to it, the costs go
Right.
like exponentially
Right,
down,
right,
right?
yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful organization in that they really help you through the process to make sure you don't make mistakes. So a lot of it seems redundant and troublesome, but it really is to make sure that the town is getting all the facts straight and making good decisions. And then they help you pay for half of it. But they're not in the place where they're gonna say, no, you can only have this or you can't have that. What they're saying is, we'll reimburse for this, but we will not for that. So honestly, I have no qualms that is going to be a problem based on the fact that we just added another cottage, AKA portable classroom, this past fall because of instructional space for programming. We did not have enough space for our English language learning at the Prescott. We did not have a space for these students who need small group instruction in the Prescott. And we keep shifting lines and trying to figure out how we're going to fit kids into the space that we have. So it's more that they don't understand the programmatic challenges that we have than it is that we have extra space.
Okay.
And as I've told several people, as a former 5 through 8 middle school principal who has survived it immensely, the last school I'm trying to get into is my old school. It's not who's there, it's how you do it. So there are K to 8 schools, there are high schools that are 6 to 12, 7 to 12. It's not who's there, it's how you do it. So, and we have a leg up on that.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. If you have an extra minute, just want to highlight one last thing on my way out the door. The Student Opportunities Act, which is the new funding formula for Chapter 70 for schools, comes with but with it.
Of course.
Of course it does. So
Exciting.
the state has decided that, yes, we're planning to give you more money, but we need you to show that you're going to pay or spend it in certain ways and invest mainly in closing gaps between achievement groups, be they ethnicity, ELs, or what have you. So although we might see an increase in money, we're probably going to need to be we have to come up with a plan by April 1st on how we're going to use that first set of money. So it comes with a caveat, it comes with expectations with it. Nothing's free. So the challenge is that, they passed the law in the fall. We're still waiting for some direction on what that plan is supposed to look like. And the school committee would have to vote and adopt that plan by the end of March, because it has to be into the Department of Elementary and Secondary Ed by April 1st. Pretty quick turnaround, especially when you consider that every school system really starts its plan last spring and starting their plan in July. So now it's, stop, hurry in this direction, and we're still waiting for some clarity on that. But I just want to mention that going forward, that hopefully, I think with the work that we have done with the override, we'll have some pieces in place. And we are looking at bringing in another trainer in the next few weeks to work with the administrative team to talk about strategies that really work on closing gaps, so that we can have some things that we're going to have to quickly design a plan. We also need to share it with the community. So I would ask that everybody please pay attention.
So it's all tied to MCAS scores?
Theoretically, yes, but I wish I could answer that question. But the commissioner last Friday came out with a note to all superintendents that, yes, you have to have a plan. I'm going to talk more about it in a couple weeks, and then really don't get started until you have the Governor 1 budget.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're going to have 2 weeks to try to put together a plan for the following year on what we're going to do and what things we're going to put in place to try to close gaps. And we're supposed to use that money from the state to do so.
I think that you've got a decent basis. You've got your strategic plan. You've got your plan for your intervention things. So you really have. I would think you have started along that line, and you can just not just, but you will be able to
Weave it
build
right
on.
in.
Right. Yes, hopefully, but
Yeah.
we're going to have to show where the money is being spent. So my point is that we're hoping to get more money, and we do have a diverse student population, which is probably going to garner us more money. The other part of that is probably going to garner more to a plan.
Okay.
We've got
Great.
Karen now. Look at all this administrative work we have for her to do now.
Exactly.
Thought it was all gonna end after the override, and now look what happened.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
coming in.
Thank you so
I
much.
appreciate
Thank
it. And I didn't know how long it was. All of the information that you went through it's great, and I'm so glad we're caught up for
Thank you very
a
much.
moment or two.
Yeah.
But thank you very
You're
much.
welcome.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Now you can run off to your next meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Good night.
So now when you read that article, you can fact check what we told you.
Well, we guess they can tell us first, because I'm not sure what's in there.
Do you want a copy of this that he was talking about with the SOA?
I mean,
Do you want a copy of this? What David was talking about, the SOA letter?
Sure.
And then just ignore my notes on the second page, but you can make a
You have to
copy and
go
share.
down the stairs.
Great,
Jen.
thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you guys.
David,
I know way downstairs.
do you have your copy that you can have and I can?
Okay.
Oh, what, the budget?
The one that I-
Yes, it was.
You gotta get Bob out of here. Bob.
All right,
Bob,
yes. You're up.
Yep.
Are you up with general government
General government.
reports on the overrides?
Very briefly, I think it'll be fairly quick, Madam Chairman,
Okay.
Fantastic. That's the best
I
I've heard
think-
all night.
Okay.
because obviously the items that affect the general government were considerably less complicated than the schools. I think
And
number
to the
one,
point,
okay, on resurfacing, we had a total of $975,000 available this year, thanks to the override. And 90% of that money has essentially been expended, and the balance will be expended in the spring. We always carry some work over. Although we have, those are the streets that were done this calendar year. There are 2 or 3 additional streets that will be done in the spring. And although Mark Ryan, the Public Works Superintendent, may have mentioned them, they're always subject to change in the spring because we're never quite sure
yep.
what happens after the winter. And in addition, the state has given us not quite as much additional Chapter 90 money as we had hoped, but they'd give us another 140 grand or so, which will also go into road work. We were hoping they would give us basically twice the amount that they did. We were kind of surprised that it's one of the few exceptions where the governor's recommendation and the legislators' initial recommendations, when they came to conference committee, usually that's the floor when they kind of all agree, but it actually was decreased. But we're grateful that we did receive some additional funds. So, and I won't make any comment about the work by the gas company. I constantly hear complaints about work. We've had some complaints about streets that were done relatively recently that the gas company has come up, and one of them is near the high school. We all know that. And that was because we had to go ahead and do the work, and the strike intervened, and work that the gas company had planned to do was postponed. And at some point, you have to go and do the work, and the gas company has to compensate the town for that, and we will hopefully be able to repair that work once they're out of the area. But that's a problem all over the community. We all know that the work needs to be done by the gas company, but it can be disruptive. And sometimes they change the order of their streets, perhaps based upon their own surveys of leaks. And streets that we thought were not going to be on the list, and we therefore go ahead and do them. Suddenly, they've come back and they've made a change, so.
I noticed they were out on one of the streets. It might have been, I actually can't even remember which street it was. It was off of Nickel Street. It was one of the streets, and I think it was Rosemary.
Rosemary, yes.
And the weather got good, and all of a sudden, there's the gas company. It's like, whoa.
But this goes on in every town.
It goes on
Yes.
every single
Everywhere.
town, it's not unique
I
to
mean, it's
Malden.
almost like they time it, waiting for the street to be done, and then, oh, let's go dig it up now.
Yes.
I firmly believe that, when, we're doing the street, underneath of that in the gas line might not be up to par, and we probably just disturb it, and then they gotta come in and fix it.
For years, Public Works, this is not new, this goes back a long, long time. When we plan to do streets, we always notify the gas company so that they can come in and check it and do their work. But for years, they let many of the lines go.
Yes, they do.
4 or 5 years ago, the old state Department of Public Utilities, it's Department of DTE, Telecommunications and Energy, has basically given the marching orders that little leaks can't be ignored. You've got to bring those lines into compliance. And Norwood has a very old system because the Norwood Gas Company goes back to the early years of this century.
Yep.
So there are a lot of lines, and it was a low-pressure system, as was explained to me a long time ago. And Boston Gas is a much higher pressure system. So many of those old lines, not necessarily dangerous, but sometimes because the odor is meant to be smelled, sometimes you could smell it, even though they didn't think the leak was necessarily dangerous. But those days are gone, so.
So when we were next,
Snow and
Can I
ice?
just make a comment,
Oh,
just
yes.
so, Bernie, on roads?
Yeah,
So, Bernie?
yes, I'm sorry.
So even with the unanticipated reduction in Chapter 90 funding, I still think we're trending by the end of this fiscal year to spend 1.7 million.
Yes, we will.
And
We're-
you're a person
it's-
of long experience here. Is this not the largest amount of money we
It's-
spent on road paving?
It's at least,
In recent
there was
history.
a short period before the last recession, whenever that was, it's getting hard to remember now, where the state actually came up with over $1 million in Norwood's case. That lasted 1 or 2 years. The recession hit, it was cut back drastically. And we were scraping at levels for years that basically were 1980s dollars. And when you consider the cost of inflation over that long period, we were suffering a net loss year after year after year. And you could see it all
You
over the
can see it
Commonwealth.
everywhere. Yeah.
The only thing, and it's one of those items would only make things more expensive down the line,
Yeah.
since it's gonna be costing more to pay for the roads if they're not maintained properly. during
Absolutely.
The normal life cycle of paving.
I mean, the one thing people talk about, that people appreciate are our roads. Everybody complains about traffic. We can't always do something about the traffic, but we can try to keep our roads in good condition.
Okay. All right, snow and ice.
Snow and ice, the budget this year was $975,000. Again, part of that is due to the effects of the override. That is that's the highest appropriation we have ever had. It's long overdue. To date, we've actually spent $261,000, and over $100,000 of that was just for the purchase of sand and salt. You have to stockpile it, and if it doesn't
now
snow,
we have a fairly big stockpile.
we have a decent stockpile, yes, because we have an overflow at the former landfill. We have to have it. If we don't use it, obviously, it's
Still good.
available. So it's still very early in the winter, we all know that. Last year when I don't think it really started snowing until March. And then once it started, it didn't seem to stop.
We still have a lot of winter to go.
Still
So-
having problems getting plows?
Yes, I think you've heard Mr. Ryan say he's lost a couple of contractors. There's a lot of competition
Yeah.
out there for plow contractors, and he's been able to get the job done, but he's still looking for contractors with some decent-sized equipment. So,
All right, I want to say something. I was taking a walk through town and in the last couple of days, and I'm pretty sure it was yesterday that it finally dawned on me what I was seeing. But the DPW people clearing up leaves, picking up the debris in different places, and it was good to see, and everybody was out there working, and so that we didn't have snow and we didn't have other things that that were the top priority things, but everybody was still pitching in and getting things cleaned up.
There are a list of winter jobs that they
Yeah.
can't always do it because of snow cover, but if they aren't involved with snow operations and the ground is clear, they try to do as much of that work. A lot of it's in some of the wooded areas in the community,
Yeah.
but you can't, much harder to get into in the spring and summer. But with leaves off the trees, it's a little bit easy to do some work in some of those areas. They stay busy.
Okay, great, thank you. Anybody?
Thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on our list is the discussion of the trends and grants analysis. I'm going to leave it up to you folks. Which ones? Let me put this way. I think that we should do this one because it impacts how Tom and Molly will be able to work on the things that we had discussed, the trends and the analysis, and which things we need to have done first. So I think this one should come first, but there's also the review of the budget. So
We should probably do the trends and grant analysis first.
okay, all right. All right, then that's what we will do. Tom, maybe you want to start us off with what you found as,
Well, it just seems to me there's a lot of interpretation into what might go into these numbers, so if you might, a good reference might be to go back to the minutes.
the financial factors on page.
Yeah, because this is, it says page 184, this is from that big UMass booklet.
Oh, this long list?
This one right here.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
the first one says revenues per capita. So that sounds easy, but it says net operating revenues over population. So I just need someone to define for me what's net operating revenue.
Okay,
Does it include the light department? Does it not include the light department? Does it include broadband? Does it not include broadband? Like, 'cause what are we trying to accomplish?
What
with
should we
this ratio?
report on the state dashboard through Department of Local Services? I think isn't there a comparable metric that would be displayed if we go on the state site?
Well, we, on the state website, because we don't have an enterprise fund, all of our revenues are included.
Yeah.
I think I have an answer for
Okay.
some of these questions. Mr. Mizuko gave me this when I was looking for the list of trends and analysis. So he gave me that, and I have to apologize, I didn't sit down right away and read it. But I think I just looked up, page 16 actually does talk about the net operating budget. So I'm gonna give it to you. And see if this helps our situation. But I understand what you mean. I do get, we need to identify some of these things.
But as Tom said, there are certain exceptions here in Norwood that probably
Yeah.
haven't been taken into consider elsewhere. That's when we're gonna have to make the decision what we want.
I would think for this particular measure, that we would not include light department revenue, and that we would want to have a measure that is something that is
Comparable.
consistent with what we report to DLS. I think it becomes less meaningful as a metric if we're including light department revenue personally. So
So I
that'd be my
think my
input.
discussion with Ann was, not that I'm trying to give people more work, but you might want to have a subcommittee, like two of you sit down and define for sure, or two of you with me and Molly, sit down and come up with, because there's a lot of ratios here, and we don't want to, and on first glance, the numbers aren't easily available. The ones that are on the DLS website go back 5 years, and I think you've requested 10 years.
Thought we decided that we could do it, 5 years was okay, wasn't it?
Start with,
To
yeah.
start with, 5 years was
Okay.
okay to start with.
And have we referenced the nice gentleman, Mark, I can't remember his last name,
John,
John, yes, John Mark,
Cordero.
you know, one of
Good
the
deal.
folks.
Yeah. Good-
You know, he would be, the person who did the training at the conference we went to would be an excellent resource to reach out to, because he already does all this, and he's very open to share how he does it. And I think he would be an excellent person to reach out to see how he extracts information.
So do we need to reduce the size of the number of requests we have and
Well,
start
I'll
that
go any
way?
way you want, but I'm just telling you
Okay.
that my preference is not to do 3 weeks worth of work, and then have the committee come back and say, well, why did you include the light department? You know,
Okay.
Why didn't you
Okay.
do this? Why? So that's my only suggestion is tell me exactly what you want, and then we'll go get it.
Okay, well then I'll keep the book. And, does anybody wanna work with me on this?
I can help with that.
You can? Okay.
I
So-
can actually, I can go through it and send my thoughts if you want it, and then we can meet and go coffee
Okay.
or whatever.
Yeah, if you
and
can
figure
just
it out.
send us an Excel document that says, you know, you use this as the denominator, this numerator, this is the denominator. Tell me where you found the source, you know, that data, if that's available.
I don't know if we're gonna get into that level as to where the data is. I mean, I can tell you what the formula should calculate, meaning, should it have light revenue, should it not? Should it have broadband revenue, should it not? But in terms of extracting the data, that's probably not something I'm gonna be able to do for you.
So, I tell you what, we'll, do you think you and I can do this in a couple of weeks and be back here? Oh, just a week. We can't do it in a week, can we?
Well, I'm in Barcelona for 2 weeks, so.
Oh,
if we-
excuse us.
So, for work, not
Oh, yeah,
for
okay.
anything fun. But I could meet potentially Friday if you have time on Friday. I could
Oh,
meet-
yes, I
yeah.
do have time
Yep,
on
and
Friday.
we could knock it out.
Okay.
And I can look at it before then and put my thoughts down on paper.
Okay,
I could do that. Oh gosh, today's Wednesday. I could do that tomorrow.
okay.
Yep, I can do that, no problem. If that's okay with everybody else.
Well, that's why, you know, you and I put that together, we bring it back to the next meeting, to the rest of the group, you'll be missing the next meeting.
Yeah, but you'll be
And
here,
then,
so.
we'll present it to you guys can decide, you can vote on it. Does that work,
Yeah, and
Judy?
I suggest that you pay a lot of attention to the Department of Local Services dashboard, and try to, because going into this, my thought was that many of these measures are pretty consistent with what is reported there.
Right,
And the reason I'm hearing Tom speak about revenues, including utility revenues, not all towns include light department revenues or have a light department to include in the revenue numbers. So I think, you know, a decision you need to make is exclude the, you know, whether we exclude them or not. And that would seem to me the way to go, because it also makes our measures more consistent in terms of how we compare to other cities and towns that are also.
yes.
And then the other question I had was, I forget how many this was, but wasn't it maybe 15 or so ratios, something like that?
Yeah,
So is the intention that we're gonna put these in the budget book so that they're there for the community to see? And if we are we gonna deduct some other pages from the budget book that,
most likely.
so I also need, you know, people to be thinking about that. You know,
So what was said in the conference that we went is he basically just gives out, the budget book was replaced by this 20-page document that goes through the trend analysis and has all the information that they need. And if people want more advanced information, they can definitely get it. But that is a layman's guide that's easily understood, that people can understand in real words and real terms as to what's going on in the town. And I think that's way more meaningful than giving someone a budget book that's 200 pages. While I'm a numbers fool, so I'll go through and look at it. Most people wouldn't do that, and I wouldn't expect them to. This is gonna give everyone a pretty good basis and real language as to what's going on with the town.
We discussed that the last meeting, and we said that we would take a look at what we want in the book. We'll decide that soon, I guess. Okay,
I think the primary audience initially is gonna be the boards and the BBC
Yeah.
and what our input and review would go. And then, you know, maybe, hopefully we'd be able to get into the budget book, but minimally, if we're able to have metrics and measures such as this that are available as we go through our budget deliberations for this
Yeah, the
year,
website.
yeah,
Yep.
that would be great.
yep,
Okay, great.
All
Thank
right.
you.
And I just wanna say on Bob's point, I agree with excluding the light revenue, because when you're in times of recession, there are certain things that typically don't fluctuate, like people have to pay for electricity, regardless of whether or not there's an economic downturn or not. So while your electric revenues might not be impacted as much as, say, your price of how much sales tax or meal tax you're collecting from the town and
Right.
that. So I think excluding those and looking solely at the factors that really fluctuate in the case of an economic upturn or downturn is the way to go, because the light department will skew it. I think that's,
Yeah.
I should have just said that.
But you know, preparing this document and having those trends and analysis and so, it's also an early warning flag for the, you know, elected officials, managers and so forth, in trying to get to, at least
That-
identify the problem before it hits us.
that was my intent when I brought this up, was
That's
that we needed that. You know, my intent was, of course, we'd share it with town meeting members and whatever, but my intent was to have that notice before we hit the skids. Okay. Are we all set then on that?
Thank you.
I will keep this and then hand it over to you after Kelly and I have talked, okay?
Great.
Alrighty. All right, where are we? Review of year-to-date budget report, revenue, review revenue, what's your, we're not gonna get everything done.
Well, if I may.
Yes.
Selfishly, because I'm going to the capital outlay
Right.
I'd like to just move the agenda if we could talk about OPED, because I think that's
Okay.
really
Yes.
a good news story that I
And we
think
can always then put these on another, other items
Yeah,
next time.
exactly.
If it's nothing, if it's nothing urgent, sure.
Right.
So we're gonna move to presentation of post-retirement benefits, actuarial and valuation reports. Tom, you are up.
Right, so let's see. See a lot of reports this month.
Tom, I want to ask you, is this one of the first public reports on OPEB? Because I don't
First
think I've
public-
ever
We do it every 2 years.
I haven't seen one of these before.
Oh, okay.
We only share good news, so now that the news is good, we do a report.
As Tom's getting that,
Right in the dark until it's good news.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly.
That's right, Mr. Rajah.
As Tom's getting that ready, you know, I just, read this report and it certainly captured my attention as well. I think just a couple weeks ago, we had Peter Frazier from Hilltop Consultants in here, our financial advisor, and he prepared a report comparing us along certain financial metrics with about 15 different communities that are AAA rated in terms of their credit rating. And one of the areas that Peter had outlined in his chart was OPED in terms of, and we stood, I think, 14th out of the 14th towns in terms of percent of liability, of a percentage of funded. We were low.
How much
Our
we had
percent
funded.
is lower than the other 13 communities in terms of how we have funded OPED. And with this new report, because I think some of the work that we've done collectively, the actuary was able to improve our standing in the OPED liability in a manner that actually we would move up in that rating because of this document, and because of the policies that we've implemented. So with that, I'll let Tom
So
go.
just the term that Mr. Donnelly mentioned, OPEB, it's other post-employment benefits. So it's really that our town's promise to our employees to cover a certain percentage of their health insurance, should they become eligible, and dental insurance. So, it is required by law to have this coverage. Ideally, what you would want to have is a fund where you had enough money in there that it generated premiums, generated investment income to pay for all of those costs. Right now, we pay for all of our costs out of our operating budget. So, retiree health insurance we pay out of our, so in that big $14 million group insurance budget is retiree benefits. So ideally, in the long run, just like they did 30 years ago, they set goals for the pension to try to get up to fully funded. The accounting industry has now issued these things, GASB 74 and 75, which basically is telling us that we have to put away money and we have to take this seriously. So there's a lot to this report. But if you look at this section I have on the screen called discount rate, so this is the rate of return that the actuary expects us to return on our investments over time. And previous to this year, he was using a figure of about 3%. And the big difference is this. So recently we got together and updated all of our financial policies, and, you know, one of our things that we talked about is our commitment to OPEB. And so our plan is to fully fund our retirement plan, which right now is 82% funded. That's scheduled actuarially to be funded by the year 2029. So we're putting in, of that 5 million we put in every year for retirement, about $1.5 million a year is make-up money to try to get us from that 82% to 100%. So the plan is that in 2029 is when we hit that 100%, then we're gonna shift that $1.5 million over to the OPEB funding. So with that signed commitment from the committees, you know, to commit to this, he was able to say, well, you can invest in better than CDs, and et cetera. So he raised our interest rate, expected rate of return from around 3% to 7%. So
That's for OPEB.
this is for OPEB.
What's our rate for the retirement system?
7.25.
7.25?
The state's moving more and more to push everyone towards 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were 8% several years ago. So this on page 4 of the report shows that out when he did this liability at the end of 18, it was $162 million. So that meant that we were going to, we had $162 million of potential liabilities, more than we have funded. So we can get into that a little bit more. So this schedule is trying to tell you how he got from $162 million of a liability to $92 million. So, you know, the big two numbers are in there are the 39 million and the 35 million, and experience, gain and loss, and change in assumptions. So
Is the change in assumption the assumption that we're going to be funding our pension plan?
yes,
at
and
the designated
I
date?
think the change in experience is more related to the change in the discount rate.
Yeah.
So those are the big factors. Also, I think that $4 million, the negatives are favorable, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So that $4 million is that our health insurance costs have not been escalating as quickly as he had anticipated. So those are the main reasons. So, you know, actions by this board and the Board of Selectmen and the school committee definitely helped us on that. I mean, previously I told him about our commitment, but now we had kind of like, it is a real commitment. So that's the difference.
Good.
Sorry, this is, report's a little fidgety tonight. Let's get back up. Because I don't want to go through this whole thing, but.
How many people, do you know off the top of your head how many people we have?
I want to say we have 500 retirees.
Yeah.
You mean how many people between school?
Yeah,
Yeah, there was some exhibits in here for that.
okay, never mind, I don't
Right,
wanna
like
take you off your track.
Like membership data?
Yes, okay.
I would just want to, just as Tom's getting that set up, I just pulled out the Hilltop report that Peter Fraser prepared for us a few weeks back. And when we looked at, there is a factor or a metric that he presented in comparison of Norwood to 13 other communities who are AAA related. Unfunded OPED unfunded OPED liability as a percent of revenue. We ranked 13 out of 14 at 140.71%. And I just did a rough calculation that based on this change, if we had this $92 million as opposed to our 162 original liability, you know, we would, that 140 would actually go to 74% unfunded OPED liability as a percent of revenue, and it would move us to like 9th or 10th on the list. Any progress, and I just
Yeah.
like to make the connection that the it's important for our credit rating that we, this is, I think, is an
Because it's a
example
real
of
number.
a financial policy that really has an impact on, not on how we budget and do things, but this could have a positive impact in our quest to gain a AAA rating, hopefully, before we do a middle school construction project.
So someone asked about how many retirees, so I had said about 500. So if you look at this, on the town side, it says 551, so that's the number. There's an Amber alert, sorry.
Oh, is that mine?
Amber alert, 11I/O Charlotte Rocha abducted. Springfield at 1:26 today, blue Honda Civic.
Sorry.
We all have this.
It's an Amber
We all
alert.
pray for that little girl.
That's
So, we have 551 retirees on the town side, and those are the ones that primarily we're funding. The school, even though the schools are listed here, has 387 retirees. The Mass Teachers Retirement Plan pays for their retirement,
Right.
right? And so what we're paying here is their dental, 387, so, our portion is their dental, and, so that was that answer.
Thank you.
I think that's,
Yeah, it's great news, and it just is a good application of, or a good example of doing sound policy management, and the end goal is to improve our position in our financials, and this certainly
Yeah.
has paid dividends.
Tom, when do you see us going up, when we will be having another rating? Because if something like this turns out this positive right now, it could have a little effect. Maybe it won't bring us into the AAA, but
well, I think we're required by GASB to do this every 2 years. Is
no,
that
I
the
mean,
question?
to get a rating. It's the
Oh,
time.
you're talking about a bond rating?
Yeah, I know we just had
We get
one.
rated every time that we do a bond issue.
So anytime, so the next time will be when? Probably well before the middle school, but, so all this data would be fed in, and this is a piece of that would
Yeah,
improve some of that.
that's so that it could possibly help us.
Yeah,
You know, we're still not that close, I don't think, to a AAA, because all of those towns that he compared us to, generally, the big number that they look for is what do you have in reserves? So,
That's
he
the
did
challenge.
say that. We
you know,
were,
which is the total free cash, stabilization fund, in our case, the electric
Right.
shock fund, they call it electric shock fund, but it's their stabilization fund. So, and, you know, comparable towns that are AAA have, you know, a lot of them have $20 million in those accounts, and we don't have anywhere near that, and, so, but I think a lot of the plans that we've worked on over the last couple of years, we're definitely gonna be headed more in that direction.
I think so.
But I would not anticipate in the next couple of years that we're gonna get moved up to a AAA, but
We're gonna try.
But, you know,
We
we're
have to
gonna
have
try,
goals.
and minimally, the work that we do maintains the very good, helps to maintain the very good rating we have in today's world, so.
the state still, this year, because we had a town meeting that didn't require free cash, they put us on the bottom of the list of when they certify it, and they told me earlier this week, it would be any minute now, and the figure is what we submitted, was $3.4 million, so unless the supervisor finds something that's different than what their auditor found, we should be hearing on that hopefully by next week anyways.
All right, thank you, Tom, appreciate it. Listen, we're gonna run a few minutes late, Mr. Donnelly has to leave and go to a capital outlay meeting. One thing that is important that I need to have us do is, discuss the debt policy that we all passed. It needs to be revised because of some, investigation I did and questioning some information that I had gotten from our financial advisors. And so what has happened is that there needs to be, I sent it all to you.
Yep.
And so you
so there
understand.
needs to be a motion for reconsideration of previous vote in order to get
we can do one of two things. You can do that, or you can, what I suggested that the school department do was that Mr. Bishop, myself, and Ms. Stewart, we meet, we discuss it, we agree upon something, which I believe is the one that we originally required.
And then we,
because
once that's
then-
finalized, then we would do a reconsideration.
I don't think you would have to do reconsideration, you would just amend the policies to,
Then accept it again.
yeah, just amend it. It's a living
Whatever.
document.
Okay.
Whatever works.
So what I will do is I will meet with them and then bring it back to you.
Yep.
I would hope we can get this done by next week.
Awesome.
Or the
Do we
next
need a
week.
motion to that effect to give you the authority to?
I would like it.
I'd like to make a motion
Thank
that we ask our chairman to meet with the chairman of the school committee and the town manager and the selectmen to make a revision to the financial policy so we can finalize them.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, unanimous. Thank you
So
very much.
excuse me, folks. I
All
have to go
right.
downstairs.
Move from one room to the other, huh?
Yeah.
Thank you, Bob. Just quickly, Bob, you can listen on your way out the door. We have Student Government Day is coming up. It is scheduled for, I have that in my notes.
Up to you now.
Yeah.
Tom, do you remember what day it was? April,
I
February,
can
February
take-
26th or something?
You can take a look at my calendar.
Stuck in my head for that. Have you ever, you're brand new, you haven't participated in that?
not, but I think I'm away that week
Okay.
for work, but I can find out.
Your work schedule will not allow stuff like that.
It's, yeah,
It's too bad.
but I will let
It's
you know.
February 26th at 8 a.m.
Right, yeah,
I think
February
it's
26th.
away, but-
So, Judy, if you're interested,
I'll
talk to
check my
Bob, I'll talk
calendar.
to Alan, see if
I'll
everybody
check
else
mine
is.
too and let you know.
Yeah. Last couple of years, I did it myself.
You did it.
I'd love to give the kids more attention.
Yes,
So it'd be
sure.
nice if we can get a couple more people with me.
Sure.
I'm a participant.
Huh?
I've done it the past 3 years, so yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we
Awesome.
have one of our students here,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
so,
Yeah, I'll check my schedule.
Okay.
If I'm home, I'm yours.
alrighty.
Generally runs 8 to 11:30, something like that, then they have lunch for everyone at the corner.
Retirees don't want 3 o'clock.
Okay, I think that, anything else on this, we can postpone till our next meeting?
Sure.
Are you all set with
That
that?
would be
I'm cool.
fine with me.
I'm cool with it.
All right. So, we will end this meeting right now. Thank you very much.
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.